Hello, my name is Gray.
And my name is Crystal.
And this is Bust the Asian Beauties, a supernatural commentary podcast where I, someone who has seen this show several times,
And I, someone who only knows the show through social media, discuss every single episode of Supernatural from start to finish. Also, we are both Asian.
both Asian. So for today's episode, we'll be discussing Season 2, Episode 3, Bloodlust, written by Sarah Gamble, directed by Robert Singer. This is our first Sarah Gamble episode that it's just her.
Yeah. Do you think Raelle Tucker was the only one holding her back from becoming violently anti-black?
Oh my god. Okay, so before going in, Crystal, what did you know about this episode?
So I knew that this was going to be our first introduction to Gordon, and I guess what I know about Gordon is that he is a hunter who got along pretty well with Dean when they first met up, but Supernatural characterized his tactics as, too ruthless, and that at some point his sister got turned into a vampire and he had to kill her. And also I knew that Season 2 would have Lenore the vampire, who drinks cow blood and tries to not hurt humans, so I assumed she was probably going to be in this episode as well. Okay, before we get into this episode, Jared Padalecki apparently once said that this episode alludes to quote-unquote racial issues, but not blatantly. Rather, they are explored in a quote-unquote fun way. Jared Padalecki was probably referring to the fantasy racism in the vampire's portrayal, but the actual racial issues that are a lot stronger in this episode is how fucking racist it is to Gordon, specifically anti-black racism. So, I guess trigger warning for talk and description of that. And also, we do want to say that neither of us are black, so we are probably not qualified to, go very deeply into all of this. And if you're looking for, fully informed perspective, we're not the ones for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so the episode starts with a then section, which is quite fun. There's a lot of flashbacks to Dead Man's Blood and vampires. But then there's a lot of lines about the Sam and Dean relationship with John. It goes from, "I just don't understand the blind faith you have in the man. It's called being a good son," to Sam yelling, "You were just pissed off that you couldn't control me anymore." And then straight from there to Azazel saying, "If only those boys knew how much their daddy loved them." So that's very fun. And then they have Dean saying, "I'm dealing with Dad's death." Cut to him hitting the Impala. "Are you?"
He sure is dealing with that death.
Yeah. And I suppose it's supposed to be a setup for what they say later, that Dean is using Gordon as a John replacement. But, it's, a very fun then section, and this episode doesn't deserve it.
Yeah, and also, the very end, the last thing they talk about how Dad taught them, to hate monsters. So it's that's the blind faith that Sam is talking about. It's a pretty good dance sequence. Yeah. Okay, so for the episode itself, we start in Montana, Red Lodge, Montana, to a woman who is running. She is being chased down by someone. It's a very unexciting chase. She trips, she hides behind a tree, and just when you think she's safe, the person chasing her down shows up and slices her head off with a sickle. And that's the entire scene.
Yeah, and this woman is a white woman. She's, wearing, gauzy white clothing, so she's very much an image of pure white womanhood who's being hunted by this terrible beast. So that's
Yeah.
not very good when we find out later who it was.
I think it's important to note that every single person in this episode, aside from Gordon, is white.
So we start on the road, and AC/DC's Back in Black is playing. Oh, as we see a bunch of shots of the Impala, like the wheels turning, all the angles as it goes down the road. And it looks shiny, it looks beautiful.
At first I was like, why are they doing this?
Me too!
I literally forgot that the whole like the Impala was destroyed and now it's back. It's like a whole thing. So I was just like,
Yeah.
why are we doing this car montage? And then I realized like, oh, the car is fixed.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
They, like, reminded us in the then sequence, too, that the car was busted, and we still both forgot. Dean's in a really good mood. He's, like, dancing a bit along to his music. And he says about the Impala, listen to her purr. Have you ever heard anything so sweet? And Sam says, if you do want to get a room, just let me know. And Dean says, don't listen to him, baby. He doesn't understand us. Literally that guy who's in a relationship with his car.
He literally wants to fuck this car.
His dick has literally been inside the exhaust pipes. Sam mentions that Dean's in a good mood, a bit suspiciously, and Dean says, like, why shouldn't I be? We have a case, we have our car, everything's good. And turns out that they're heading to Red Lodge. Oh, they mentioned that the case involves severed heads and mutilated cows. So I guess I thought at first that they were chasing Azazel because of the cow deaths being a demon sign, yeah. So that might be what's happening.
So Sam and Dean are in the police station and they're posing as journalists.
Sam's wearing the cutest little tweed-ish suit. Like, he looks adorable.
They're talking to an officer and they mention the cattle death and the 2 murders by decapitation. Sam and Dean propose that this may be ritual stuff, and at first the officer laughs at them until he realizes that they're not kidding. So he goes on to this explanation about how cattle just die and literally just bloat and split open under the sun after they die. Which is a very fun visual. Is that true?
I have no idea, and I didn't want to Google it.
I know, me too. I was like, wait. And then I realized what I was typing in the Google search bar, and I was like, actually, I don't want to see. Anyway, Sam and Dean get sent out of his office.
So now they're heading into a hospital morgue in white lab coats, and the person working there has a name tag that says J Manners, which I guess Kim Manners probably gave that last name to that guy.
Yeah.
Dean pretends to know the guy by calling him John, which, ooh, there's something there. And the guy replies, the J stands for Jeff. So Dean gets Jeff to leave the room, and they start inspecting the dead body. They take out the corpse, they open up the box with the head. There's some banter about, like, you open it, no, you open it. And there's no obvious markings, but Dean says that they should check if there's anything stuffed down her throat, like the moth in Silence of the Lambs, which is the first Hannibal reference in this episode.
Yeah.
And Sam starts poking at her mouth, and says that he's gonna puke. And Dean notices that when Sam pulls up her lip, there's something on the gum, like an indentation, and he presses on it, and a fang comes out, which means that this dead woman is a vampire.
So Why are we not doing any commentary?
It's because we had too many conversations about how long we are and how everyone hates us.
I know!
I'm just like trying to speed through every scene.
I literally, like, my notes are so short this time.
Yeah, I'm like, if I talk anymore, all our listeners will leave us. No, okay. Let's do some commentary. I don't know, do you have any thoughts on this scene?
Absolutely nothing. Sam and Dean stop over at the bar, and as they enter, we get lingering shots of this guy, like, sitting at the side of the bar. He seems to be listening in on them. They head over to the bartender, and
he's played by Ty Olsson, who plays Benny.
yeah, literally, it's fucking Benny.
Do we know that Benny isn't just this guy under a different name
Eli?
later? Yeah, like,
Yeah.
what if he
Well,
just
he has
changed
a
his
different accent, but maybe that's just something he put on like a couple of years later, you know?
name? Yeah.
Maybe maybe the psychosexual obsession with Dean is a result of Dean saving him early on.
Maybe so.
Sam says, "Hey, we're looking for some people," and the bartender says, "Sure, it's hard to be lonely." Which, like, this dude probably thought Sam and Dean are together, right? And Sam said, "We," like, we're looking for some people. So I was like, "OMG, polyamory, right?"
Yeah, and Dean live slug reacts to this a bit in the background.
Sam hands over a $50 bill to the guy, and the guy takes it. And then they start explaining that they're looking for people who moved here about 6 months ago, who are probably frequently rowdy in the bar.
And my question is, $50, Sam? 50 for this?
That's a lot, right? That's a lot.
Are there people in this bar who are loud? Here's $50 for your answer. Bro, what?
The man confirms that yes, some people moved to this place called Barker Farm a while back, and they're drinkers and they're noisy and had to be thrown out once or twice. Sam and Dean head out. They've gotten their information, and as they walk to the door, we see that the man sitting in the corner, who we were lingering around earlier, is gone.
Yeah, so we head out into the alleyway, and we switch to Gordon's point of view as he follows Dean and Sam, and loses sight of them. So there's like a lot of like foreboding music playing during the scene. It's very dark outside. So like we're supposed to be suspicious of this man, I suppose. And he turns around, and then Sam and Dean are there, and they shove him against the wall, and Dean holds a knife to his throat. And it's already very bad to look at. But we get even more violence on Gordon later. So, yeah, Dean...
I didn't find this part that... I guess because it's overshadowed by what happens, like, later on.
Yeah.
So, like, this part for me was like, oh, they're just, doing the usual routine.
Yeah. But, like, I saw Dean shove Dr. Sexy against a wall when he thought that something was up, and that was a very different vibe and violence level. So, Dean tells Gordon to smile, and then elaborates that he wants to see his teeth. Gordon says, like, stick that thing someplace else, I'm not a vampire. I heard you guys in there. And Sam asks what he knows about vampires, and Gordon says how to kill them. Now seriously, bro, that knife's making me itch. I think he's, like, very likable here, right? Like, I was like, wow, what a fun, cool guy.
He is a charming man.
Yeah, he's charming. He's, like, the right amount of cocky. Like, he's, like, a good, like, Hunter intro character.
Yeah, in different circumstances, and I mean in this circumstances too, I guess. Like, he got along well with Dean, and that makes sense.
Yeah. He shows them that his gums don't have any fangs, and they finally let go of him. After they let go of him, he says, "Now who the hell are you?"
And then we cut to the car where he says, Sam and Dean Winchester. And first things first, this car is fucking fantastic. I love this car.
Yeah.
It's bright red, number one. Number two, apparently I looked it up and it's a Chevy El Camino. And like it looks pretty cool. Like, it's a cool car. It's like 2-person car, right? And because it's like a truck in the back, but it's very small. It's just so different from what you would think a hunter's car would look like, I feel. Like, it's a classic car, but well, I don't know if it's a classic car. It's an old car. but because of the color, I guess, like, you wouldn't expect someone like Gordon to have this car. But it looks cool when it's driving around. It looks pretty cool. So, fun car. But what happens in this scene is Gordon proceeds to fucking monologue about how good of a hunter John is and how the Winchester brothers have big shoes to fill, but they fill them and they're great trackers. And I was like, I'm so sorry, Gordon, that they're making you monologue about how good the Winchesters are. I was like, Gordon, I know this is not your heart.
Oh, me when Kevin tells Sam and Dean he loves them.
He also offers his condolences because he is made aware that John died. And Dean remarks that, oh, you know so much about our family. And Gordon says, word travels fast. You know how hunters talk. Dean says, we don't, actually. And Gordon says, there's a lot your father never told you, huh? They start talking about the case, and Gordon did take down those 2 vampires. And Dean asks if Barker Farm is a lead. Gordon says, no, I checked it out already. It's just a bunch of hippies. So Dean asks where the nest is. And Gordon says that it's a real pleasure meeting the Winchester brothers, but he's got this one covered. He doesn't want to reveal where the nest is. And apparently, he followed this nest all the way from Austin. And he wants to finish this by himself. Dean says, like, pretty please, can we go with you? I really want to hunt right now. Like, I've been craving for a hunt. And Gordon's like, go somewhere else, bro. I don't need you here. And he redirects them to a chupacabra case 2 states away. But he genuinely seems enthused about meeting Sam and Dean. And he drives away.
Yeah.
With
and
his
he says that
amazing
he'll buy
car.
them a drink. His car's so good.
Yeah, I know. His car's fucking beautiful. Did you know, like, when I was younger, I tried to get into classic cars.
Was it because of Supernatural?
I mean, it was partly because of Supernatural, partly because I had a friend who would draw them.
Oh.
And I wanted to be able to recognize his drawings. Like, I wanted to point out, like, oh, that's this car that you drew, because he was really good at it.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get into it. But it's just the I guess the barrier to being a car person, like specifically a classic car person, is quite high. So I just never got into it.
Well, okay, I think Gordon so far is a good continuation from us meeting Joe and Ellen and Ash in the Roadhouse last episode. Like, this season seems to be, like, expanding the hunter community and seeing how isolated John kept them. And I guess I'm curious to see if that goes anywhere else.
Because we're already, like, 2 out of 3 episodes into season 2. Well, actually, even in episode 1, right? Like, they had Bobby around.
Yeah.
So we're already 3 for 3 expanding the hunter circle. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if, well, I do remember, like, what happens to these people, but specifically for season 2, I don't know how they play out.
We cut to a mill where there's a man named Conrad who is there working. He hears a noise and he goes out to investigate, and it seems like everything's fine, and then he turns around and Gordon is there attacking him with a machete. So the man, his fangs come out and they start fighting near an electric saw.
God, it's such a thrill to watch. It's so good.
Yeah, it's a good fight scene. So Conrad turns on the saw, and he pins Gordon down next to it. So he's like lowering the saw down, like it's sort of about to cut off his head. Yeah, and Sam comes in. He yanks Gordon out of the way, and then Dean attacks Conrad and pins him under the saw. And then we just cut to Dean's face as he lowers the saw down, and presumably this guy's head is being sawed off and Dean's face is getting totally sprayed with blood.
Good shot. People, I've seen this screen cap a lot. I didn't know the context, but I've seen the screen cap and he looks very bloodied and shit. The context makes it a lot more oh my god,
Right. And Gordon says, "So I guess I gotta buy you that drink." Meanwhile, Sam and Dean are sort of looking at each other and there's sad music, and I think generally the idea is just wow, that was a really violent murder you just did there, bro.
Yeah.
Which it is, I think it's one of the most visceral kills we've seen Dean do so far, because usually it's just, a gun or an arrow.
A good slice.
Yeah. This was very messy. And especially since we know that Dean is doing this because he's been itching for a hunt since John died. I guess his violence is sort of concerning on a him emotional level, and also on a this poor guy's head just got cut off level.
Yeah, but also it's fascinating the way they frame it this episode, that you have to do your job, right? It's a job and you are required to do it, but you shouldn't enjoy it, because if Dean in this scene enjoyed this thing, that would be a source of a lot of concern. And in fact, that's what they do with Gordon, right? He keeps on saying that you have to love your job, and that's a source of concern.
Right.
So it's just fascinating to me that you can do murders, you can do violence, as long as you don't enjoy it, it's fine. Back in the bar, Sam and Dean and Gordon are drinking. And Gordon insists on paying for the drinks. So Dean and Gordon specifically are talking. And they're having a good time over, what just happened. And Dean notices that Sam is not talking. So he asks, "You alright, Sammy?" Sam says, "Yeah, I'm good." And Gordon says, "Well, lighten up a little, Sammy." And Sam says, "Only Dean gets to call me dad."
I liked that. It's consistent. He gets mad at the guy who's in the cage with him for calling him Sammy and the Benders.
Yeah, but it's quite rude. I thought it was rude because I get that he was upset, and specifically he's upset at Gordon, right? For being so chummy after what happened.
Right.
But I was like, don't be so rude. You can tell him politely to not call you Sammy. Dean literally just called you Sammy. It's an easy mistake to make.
Yeah. That's fair.
But Gordon remains polite. He says, "Okay, no offense meant. We're just celebrating a little for a job well done." Sam says decapitation is not my idea of a good time. And Gordon says, "It's not like it was human. You should have a little more fun with your job." Which is what I was saying earlier. They portray Gordon as someone who does hunting and likes it. And apparently that's a fucking sin. I mean, Gordon's case runs deeper than that.
Yeah.
But that is, at this moment, in this scene, that is something that you're supposed to go. You're not supposed to enjoy it. Like, you know. Dean says, "See, I told you, Sam." And Sam's like, "Fuck it. I'm not gonna bring you guys down. I'm gonna go back to the motel." Dean tosses him the car keys and Sam leaves, and Gordon asks, "Oh, was it something I said?" Dean says he just gets like that sometimes and proposes that him and Gordon drink some more.
Okay, like Jared Padalecki said that this episode alludes to racial issues, which means that the vampires sort of fall into the trope of fantasy racism, where like a creature that's not a human is used as a stand-in for people of color, and then discrimination against them is used as a stand-in for racism. So in this episode, the white vampires are POC coded, and Gordon, a black man, is racist coded, which, you know, sure is something. And the "it's not like it was human" is supposed to be like this is just like how racist people dehumanize people of color, except they're putting it through the mouth of a black man who, like, if he was a real guy, would probably have a lot more experience with that dehumanization. It's strange. It's a lot. We've seen Supernatural try to tackle racism directly in Route 666, and that wasn't great. And now we're seeing them try to tackle it symbolically in this episode, and it's also incredibly not great. Especially because here, it seems like they're saying, like, "Oh, we will only get you to care about vampires and view them as a group that is victims if the perpetrator of the harm is a black man, and you will only care about fake racism if it's against people who on screen are white and pale."
Yeah.
So Sam goes back to the motel room, and he puts the car keys on, like, this little hook thing that looks kind of like a cactus. And then at the bar, Dean is telling a story. He says that he picked up this crossbow and hit that ugly sucker with a silver-tipped arrow right in the heart. And Sam's waiting in the car. He and John burn up the body. And then he says, "I'm sitting there and looking into the fire, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm 16 years old, and I start screaming and kicking my legs and bashing my teeth in, but, like, because Sam was 12 and had to wait in the car while his family killed people, not really, I don't care about Dean that much." He's 12, he's really doing his little math homework in the car while, like, knowing that his family might not come back alive. Like,
Sam, it's okay. Like, I was 10, I was left at home. It's fine.
But he knows that they're on a hunt because they drove him out there. He's not in the motel, you know? Like, he's probably there to be their, like, getaway driver if they need to run as a 12-year-old.
He's 12!
I know, and do you think John wouldn't make a 12-year-old be a getaway driver? So, yeah, and also, yeah, I guess it's sad that Dean had to hunt when he was 16, whatever. So, he says, "Most kids my age are worried about pimples, prom dates. I'm seeing things that they'll never even know, never even dream of. So right then, I just sort of..." And Gordon interrupts him and says, "Embrace the life?" And Dean says, "Yeah." And Gordon says, "Yeah." Which, how do you think Dean was actually going to end that sentence?
I have no fucking idea. The only thing I had in my head was, like, if Gordon and I were talking, I would fucking hate this guy. He keeps on interrupting.
Crystal coded.
Literally. To the uninformed, like, I have literally cut off segments of the podcast where I just tell off Crystal for interrupting me. Like, I'm very pissy about it. He was definitely gonna say something else other than embrace the life. Like, embrace the life is the farthest thing that you could possibly say, that Dean could possibly say in that situation.
Yeah, though, I guess on one hand, he is trying to impress Gordon this entire conversation, right? So maybe
Yeah.
he was gonna end it with, and then I was like, who cares about prom and pimples? I'm so cool and I shoot guns. So, we don't know.
I love that they're discussing all this so loudly in the middle of a
Oh,
buzzing bar. Like, they're like, and I fucking killed that ugly sucker. The guy beside them was just like, what the fuck is going on over at that table?
Eli probably overheard them, which is why he is warned against them.
Yeah, I mean, that's how he know that they celebrated.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, Eli is standing over there like, please stop, what the fuck? Dean asks about Gordon's backstory, and he says that he saw a vampire for the first time when he just turned 18. He was home alone with his sister, and he heard the window break in her room. So he ran to her room with his dad's gun, but it was too late. And he says that he shot the vampire, but obviously that didn't do anything. And it knocked him out. And his sister was gone after he woke up. And after that, he left home and went around alone, learning stuff about vampires, how to track them down and kill them. And then he finally found that vampire, and that was the first creature he'd ever killed. Dean says, sorry about your sister. And he says, yeah, she was beautiful. Which, is that, do you think that's a normal sentence? Because I was off-put.
No, I think that's normal.
Okay.
Yeah. You do say that about dead relatives, I feel.
Interesting. Yeah, maybe so.
You don't say he was handsome, though. So,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Huh.
I think she was beautiful. It's a weird. I understand why it's rubbing you off, because it's like, oh, I'm sorry about your dead sister, and you were like, she looked fucking. She was hot as fuck. Like, you know, it's a weird thing to be like, oh, someone's dead, and then your first remark is regarding their like looks. But
Right.
I don't think like that's what's going on here. Like, I think beautiful is just like she
Right.
had a beautiful soul type of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Gordon says, I can still see her, you know, the way she was. But that was a long time ago. And then he brings it back to John and says, like, your dad, that's gotta be rough. And Dean is open about John's death for the first time. He says, he was just one of those guys, took some terrible beatings, just kept coming. So you're always thinking to yourself, he's indestructible, he'll always be around, nothing can kill my dad. Then, just like that, he's gone. And he says, I can't talk about this to Sammy, you know? I gotta keep my game face on. Yeah. Aww. But why do you think he needs to keep his game face on? Like, Sam's made it very clear to him that he's ready, that he's, like, down to talk about it, that he wants Dean to open up, and, like, for them to support each other. So, yet, what is it that is holding Dean back?
I think it's just the whole, like, you can't ever rely on someone younger than you, like a younger brother, for that kind of support. Like, it's just how he was raised, that you need to be taking care of Sam, not the other way around. And certainly no one's gonna take care of you. So he can't feel like he can open up to his family. Which is sad, because Sam is very open to it.
He says, the truth is, I'm not handling it very well. I feel like I have this...
Yeah, we saw Dean.
Yeah, we saw. I feel like I have this, and then Gordon says, hole inside you? And it just gets bigger and bigger and darker and darker. And then he says, good. You can use it. Keeps you hungry. Trust me. There's plenty out there needs killing. And this'll help you do it. And then he says, Dean, it's not a crime to need your job.
What do you think about that?
I like the idea that hunters are all just fucked up little guys. using their trauma to create more trauma in the world.
They're saving people, Crystal. They're hunting things.
Yeah. Sure. Well, maybe people should just get eaten by werewolves and it's fine. Like, maybe that's the circle of life. Have you considered that?
Maybe his sister wanted to be a vampire. Like, maybe she read Twilight and she was like, Bella's so fucking cool. This is my goal in life, you know?
I think that if you're hunting from a place of revenge or inner emptiness, you're going to end up missing out on a lot of nuance and causing a lot more collateral damage than you should, which we see with Gordon and with John. So I don't think it's a crime to like your job as a hunter or to take pride in your job as a hunter, but I think if you need it, then you're probably, like, doing something wrong when you're doing it.
So we go to Harville's Roadhouse, and Ellen is around. She picks up the phone, and it's Sam. I just find it so fascinating because they do it in episode 1 as well, right? Where Bobby's in there for literally, like, maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes, you know?
Yeah.
And they do it here too, where Ellen is around for literally so little. And it's fun because I'm used to in later seasons where someone is around, they're around for the entire episode, right?
Right.
Like when you have an extra hunter, an extra guest character, it's because they're gonna be around for the entire episode. So it's fun to have just, you know, like random people picking up the phone and you see them.
Yeah.
I feel like it expands the universe.
Right. And it's nice to think about the fact that they have a network of people that they can call up for help whenever.
Yeah. Like, imagine if a little bit late, like, when Cass comes around. Like, you know how, like, every time Cass shows up, it has to be, like, because he's in the entire episode. So he can't just be like, oh, we just need a phone call. And every time they do that, he's off screen. Like, it would be fun to just see Cass, like, show up for 2 minutes in an episode, you know? Sam called to ask about Gordon. Ellen says, oh, he's a good hunter. Why are you asking? And Sam says, oh, we're working with him. And Ellen seizes up and says, don't do that, Sam. Sam says, I thought he was a good hunter. To which Ellen replies, and Hannibal Lecter's a good psychiatrist. Ellen says Gordon is a danger to everyone and everything around him. And if he's working a job, just let him be. Let him handle it.
Do you think that the Hannibal reference is supposed to be foreshadowing for the later reveal that Gordon killed his sister? Because isn't Hannibal's backstory that he had to kill, that he ate his sister?
Yeah. That's pretty good one. Nice catch. That's pretty good. I actually didn't know if that was like an actual thing that happens in the canon of Hannibal or just happens in Hannibal, the TV show.
I mean, what is the canon of Hannibal really? Like the books?
Yeah.
Okay. I think his sister matters in the books too, but yeah, I'm not sure.
Back in the bar, Gordon and Dean are still talking, and Gordon starts saying that in hunting, there are no shades of gray. You just find the bad thing and kill it. And that's it. Just black and white. Dean says, I don't think Sam would agree. And Gordon says, he's different. But you and I, we were born to do this. It's in our blood. Throughout this, we are lingering over Dean's face. And he is looking quite uneasy.
Okay, so I think Dean's uneasiness is probably because now that he's had a bit of time to process, he's realizing a little more the extent of what John asked him to do. And also because he's looking at Gordon, he's going like, by Gordon's standards, like, Gordon will probably kill Sam.
I didn't actively think about that. But you're right.
Yeah.
Do you think Dean was actively thinking that? Like,
I think he
Gordon would kill Sam?
I think he was like, Well, I am definitely never telling Gordon about Sam's psychic powers, at least. I think he at least thought that. And the fact that Gordon specifically says it's in our blood, and then we know that it's in fact in Sam's blood, that he has demon blood in him, and that's what makes him not human, is like fun foreshadowing. I didn't really know where to bring up.
Okay, so back in the motel, Sam is outside. He's getting a soda. And he's looking around suspiciously, and the camera work is also supposed to make you feel uneasy, you know? When he gets inside his room, he kind of laughs at himself, probably thinking like, oh my god, I'm such a nervous wreck. When suddenly, two guys jump him and knock him out.
So we see that he's in a truck going over a bridge and then going to a farmhouse. Sam is tied up to a chair and there's a sack over his head. And someone pulls it off, and it's Eli, the bartender. And he shows his fangs and hisses at Sam. But then a woman, Lenore, appears in the doorway and tells him to stop. She goes over and introduces herself to Sam, says that she's not going to hurt him, they just have to talk. And Sam says, talk? Yeah, okay, but I might have a tough time paying attention to much besides Eli's teeth. Which is like, Sam, do you want to die? Like, just chill. Lenore says, he won't hurt you. You have my word. And Sam goes, your word? Great, thanks. Listen, lady, no offense, but you're not the first vampire I've met. Sam's like, okay, I get it. He's just been kidnapped. Like, whatever. But, like, Sam, stop being so rude.
He's so pissy this entire episode.
She explains that we're not like the others. We don't kill humans. We don't drink their blood. We haven't for a long time. Sam thinks that it's a joke and then asks how they're still alive. And she says that they can subsist off of cattle blood. It's disgusting, but it allows them to survive. Sam asks why, and she says, survival. No deaths, no missing locals, no reason for people like you to come looking for people like us. We blend in. Our kind is practically extinct. Turns out we weren't quite as high up the food chain as we imagined.
I love that she says people like us.
Yeah.
And she uses the word people.
It's very good. And the thing is, because the last time we get vampires, they also sort of tried a little bit of the creatures are people
We're
too
people
thing.
too, yeah.
Yeah, with Luther going, we have a right to live, etc. Except, you know, Luther's doing a lot of killing of people, so it kind of just sounds stupid. But I'm glad that they revisited the idea and that they're doing a decent job with it, if only they weren't being racist. Eli asks, why are we explaining ourselves to this killer? Which is also a good line because, you know, like, suddenly you're like, oh, I guess saving people hunting things involves killing people. Uh-oh.
This is the part where it's really obvious.
Yeah, what they're trying to do.
The hunters are the monsters of this episode. And they do the whole, like, they were laughing in the bar right after they killed Conrad, you know, shit like that. Mm-hmm. And you, the audience, are supposed to be like, oh, like, we're the bad guys.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting take to have.
I think that they are making Gordon, like, so irredeemable seeming. It's because this is an episode where they're like, oh god, are we the bad guys? But they could turn around and be like, no, Sam and Dean are fine. Gordon is the bad guy. Like, we're not actually going to properly question Sam and Dean's actions. We're only going to do a little bit of questioning of hunting. It's just this one bad apple who happens to be a dark-skinned black man who we make out to be very, very evil and violent, and he's so scary for standing.
That's a good, like, yeah, this is a bad apple story. This is what's happening. Like, the way Ellen rejects him, right? Like, you're supposed to think the entire hunting community is rejecting him.
Yeah.
Because Ellen is stand-in for the hunter community. So, this is a story, that's a really good way to put it. This is a bad apple story. That's what they're trying to tell.
Yeah, Eli specifically says, we choke on cow's blood so that none of them suffer. Ugh, poor dude. And Lenore says, Eli, that's enough. And Sam says, yeah, Eli, that's enough. Sam! Sam!
I wish Benny fucking killed you, Sam.
They literally should have just eaten you, like, right there. She tells him that what's done is done. We're leaving this town tonight. Sam asks, okay, well, if you're heading out, why are you talking to me? And she says, 'cause I know you're kind, and once you have the scent, you'll keep tracking us. It doesn't matter where we go, hunters will find us.
That's a very interesting parallel to what was said in Dead Man's Blood about vampires, that if they caught your scent, it's for life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's another push in the direction of the real vampires are the hunters. That scenario. Yeah.
Yeah. And Sam says, okay, so you're asking us not to follow you. And she says, we have a right to live. We're not hurting anyone. Which is the good version of the Luther line from Dead Man's Blood. Sam says, give me one good reason why I should believe you. And she says, fine. You know what I'm going to do? And there's a tense moment, and then she says, I'm going to let you go. And she has two other people take Sam back to the truck with the sack head, and they drive him back.
In the motel, Dean and Gordon are talking about the case. Gordon points out the general location of the nest, and they discuss it some more when Dean starts wondering where Sam is. Gordon says maybe he went for a walk. He seems like a take a walk type of guy.
What does that even mean? Like, it feels like he's calling him gay, but I'm not sure why.
But the thing is, he literally is a take a walk type of guy.
Yeah.
Gordon literally said, I will fucking clock this guy for what he is. And he did. Just then, Sam enters the room and asks Dean if they can talk alone.
Yeah, okay, so they head out to the parking lot, and I wish Sam had prepared some flashcards for this, because it's not going well. He tells Dean, maybe we have to rethink this hunt. And Dean says, what are you talking about? Where were you? And Sam says, in the nest. They found me. Dean says, how'd you get out? How many did you kill? Sam says, none. And Dean goes, they didn't just let you go. And Sam said, that's exactly what they did. The whole time, Sam's, letting Dean control this conversation here. Bro, if you want Lenore to get out alive, you have to start talking and interrupt. Dean asks where the nest is. Sam says that he doesn't have any info, etc. And then he says, maybe we shouldn't go after them. I don't think they're like other vampires. I don't think they're killing people. And Dean doesn't believe him, but Sam says that they live off of animal blood, that's what the cattle mutilations were, and Dean is still disbelieving, even though they let Sam go without a scratch. And Dean goes, no man, no way. I don't know why they let you go. I don't really care. We find them, we waste them. Dean asks, what part of vampires don't you understand, Sam? If it's supernatural, we kill it. End of story. That's our job.
God, I wish they killed Supernatural.
Oh.
Just end it on season 2, bro.
Yeah. So he goes, no, Dean, that is not our job. Our job is hunting evil. And if these things aren't killing people, they're not evil. And you know how Dean in Faith was like, okay, the Reverend is a human, but he's killing people, and that makes him a monster enough for me, so let's
Mm-hmm.
kill him. And Sam was like, no, we're not gonna kill a human. What do you think? What do you think Sam and Dean's little dictionary definitions of who they can kill is?
I think Sam just doesn't like killing. Like,
That's
I think
true.
that's what this boils down to. Like, he's just like, let's kill as little people as possible. I think his line is if it's like something that you can reason with,
Right.
then it's not something you have to immediately kill.
Yeah.
So you can reason with a vampire, you can reason with a human. For Dean, what do you think?
I think Dean's definition is anything that's not human and or anything that kills people. Like, he's got a broad range of things that he's willing to kill. Dean says, of course they're killing people. That's what they do. They're all the same, Sam. They're not human, okay? We have to exterminate every last one of them. Oh, okay. What a
Is this
lie.
what Jared Padalecki is talking about?
Yeah, like, is Jared Padalecki saying that? Like, what is Jared Padalecki saying? That, like, Dean's like a genocider white supremacist? So, and Sam says, no, I don't think so, not this time. Dean says, well, Gordon's been after these vampires for a year, he knows. And Sam says, you're taking Gordon's word for it? Ellen says he's bad news. And Dean goes, well, I'm supposed to listen to Ellen? We barely know her either. I'll just go with Gordon. And Sam says, right, because Gordon's such an old friend. You don't think I can see what this is?
Ooh.
Ooh. But no. And Dean says, what are you talking about? And Sam says, he's a substitute for Dad, isn't he? A poor one. He's not even close, Dean. Not on his best day. Dean says, you know what? I'm not even going to talk about this. And Sam says, you know, you slap on this big fake smile, but I can see right through it, because I know how you feel, Dean. Dad's dead, and he left a hole, and it hurts so bad you can't take it. But this is a serious scene, but... But you can't just fill up that hole with whoever you want to!
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very serious scene, Crystal. Why are you laughing?
No reason at all. No reason at all. Yeah, he says it's an insult to John's memory. So I guess a few things here. First, the whole thing is obviously, sorry.
Yeah, the whole thing.
Is a reference, well, is a sort of a callback to Gordon's line about a hole being left in Dean after John's death. And, you know, like, Gordon's take is that Dean needs to fill it up with the act of hunting, with, like, the satisfaction that he gets with revenge. Sam's take is that Dean needs to basically, like, I guess, like, have emotional support from people, which, you know, good for Sam for being a healthy little boy. And I guess my second thing is just, like, how, okay, I guess, like, what do you think is the reasoning behind Sam saying that it's an insult to John's memory? Like, why does Sam care?
I didn't really question the line. I just accepted it as like, yeah, it is an insult to John's memory for you to... Okay, here's the thing. I don't really get what Sam is trying to say, that Dean is trying to replace Dad with Gordon. How? Like, following Gordon's orders? Following Gordon's philosophy?
Yeah, I think following
Maybe that
Gordon's
one. Maybe that one.
philosophy, and I think he is sort of starting to see Gordon as, you know, the invincible hunter that he viewed John as. So, just as a figure of, like, wow, what a good hunter. And, I mean, I guess he also just really wants to impress Gordon, which I guess he also did with John. But yeah, I think it's mostly just the philosophy thing. Gordon definitely seems more like a peer for Dean, or like a love interest than a father figure.
Yeah, a father figure.
So
the line kind of threw me off because, like, I don't know. It's not how I saw, like, the Dean and Gordon relationship to go down, I feel.
Yeah.
Sam saying that you're replacing your father, you're daddying this man. It's, like, so weird.
Yeah. I think maybe if they dug a bit more into, because Gordon mentions that he knew John, so maybe if Dean and Gordon had more conversations about John, where Dean's very clearly trying to learn more stories about John through Gordon, I could see Sam's point of view better, but, like, that's not really what we got at all. So Dean says, okay, and then he turns away slightly, and then he turns back and punches Sam in the face, like, really hard.
Ooh, yes! Violence, hate, and anger.
My response to this was violence, hate, and anger at Dean.
I love it when they punch each other. Like, yes, my favorite Bible story is Cain and Abel. I love it when they recreate that story.
See, okay, it's okay when Sam tries to shoot Dean dead in Asylum. It's super cool and sexy when he, like, beats Dean up in season 4. But Dean is not allowed to lay a finger on Sam. I think that if you're the big sibling, you're not allowed to hit your younger siblings, and they're allowed to murder you. Like, I think that's the rule.
Well, I mean, it depends. We've talked about this before, but it depends on the age gap.
Yeah.
If you're, like, 2 years older, just fucking kill each other. It's fine.
I guess what I don't like is just how Dean says okay and turns away. So, like, the anger here is not... It doesn't feel that explosive because he's so quiet beforehand. It feels like the sort of, like, John's quiet resentment form of anger, which I think scares me more than... Because in the pilot, we see Dean get really angry at Sam and shove him up against the bridge for saying that Mom's dead and nothing we can do can bring her back. But, like, he's yelling, right? Like, that was clearly, like, an act of, like, sudden, like, emotion. I feel like this one was, like, scarier to look at.
Well, this one is a build-up. Like, he is irritated at Sam from, like, last episode because of all the whole, like, asking, everything.
Yeah. He already beat up the Impala, though. Like, is he not over it yet? Like, come on.
Violence is the answer.
Yeah, so Sam turns back around and he just says, you hit me all you want. It won't change anything. I think that's what cemented this scene as so uncomfortable for me. Because, I don't know, just out of context, it's just... Yeah, actually, never mind. I don't have a sense to say after that, but yeah, I just don't like how it's, like, very one-sidedly Dean beating up on Sam. And he... Oh, and also... Like, while their earlier conversation was happening, we see that Gordon was looking out of the window at them, so probably eavesdropping on their conversation. So Dean says, I'm going to that nest, and if you don't want to tell me where it is, fine, I'll find it myself. And he goes away. They go back into the motel room, but Gordon's gone, which means he probably went after the vampires already. Sam says, Dean, we have to stop him. And Dean says, really, Sam? Because I say we lend a hand. And Sam asks Dean to just give him the benefit of the doubt. He says, you owe me that. And Dean says, yeah, we'll see. I'll drive. Give me the keys. And Dean saying I'll drive made me very upset. Because I know that in later seasons, Sam, like, barely ever gets to drive the Impala. And we get so many... There's so many good moments in season 1 that wouldn't happen if Sam wasn't driving the Impala.
Yeah.
Like, him cutting off John's truck. I think in Well, also, in Scarecrow, doesn't he... He's the one who stops the car and gets out.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, him being able to drive is basically akin to, like, his agency
Agency.
to rebel against Dean, John, his family in general. So, the
And
fact
then we
that...
lose it.
Yeah, and the fact that he loses it in later seasons and that he's already, like, explicitly getting it taken away now is... makes me sad. So, we look over to the little cactus thing where the keys were, but they're gone, because Gordon stole the Impala keys, which I think is so fun. Like, yes, go girl.
Is this why Dean was so mad later?
I figured he was mad because, like, Gordon was, like, violent with Sam.
Oh, yeah.
But,
That
yeah,
makes
I
sense.
guess it could also be because he stole the
It's
Impala
a
keys.
cumulative. So in the car, Dean is jumping baby, which is his dream come true. No, he's trying to jumpstart the car with like the wires and shit that you usually see on TV with old cars. And Sam points out where the farm is on the map, and he apparently counted the time it took to get from the farm to the bridge, and he knows the directions in detail just by feeling it out. Good for him.
Oh, Dean says, "You're good. You're a monster pain in the ass, but you're good." And, in the context, it's just like, yay, like, you know the directions. But, out of context, it's a very fun line for this episode. Because this episode is all like some monsters can be good, and also with, like, the underlying thing of Sam is a monster, but is he good? And, like, does he deserve to die? So, like, like, Sam is literally a monster, parentheses, pain in the ass, but he's good.
Yeah. I laughed because I thought you were like reaching for the fucking stars with that one.
No, everything is about Sam's monsterhood arc in season 2 to me.
In the farm, Ellie is talking to Lenore and is trying to convince her to kill the tree hunters. He says at this point it's kill or be killed. Lenore says no, that there's always going to be more hunters if we kill them. And they argue some more, but eventually Eli concedes. And we are told that they're leaving before sunrise. And that also, it's not just them too. There's like more people in the city. So they need to collect those people first before they go. We see Gordon drive past the bridge. And then we see Sam and Dean drive past the bridge. And then we go back to the farmhouse where Lenore is packing up in her truck, and Gordon eventually shows up in front of her and stabs her with a dead man's blood soaked knife. And they really characterize Gordon as, kind of misogynistic, I guess, because like he says bitch here.
Yeah. Because earlier in the bar, he says thank you, sweetie, to a waitress as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He calls Lenore bitch a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like when he says like dead man's blood bitch, that's like kind of like the turning point, right? Like that's when you're supposed to be like, oh, this guy is horrible because he's misogynistic.
Right. Who else could have said this exact line before?
Who else could it?
Only Gordon could ever call a
in the
vampire bitch. He's so evil. He's uniquely bad. He's so scary and evil because he says bitch. Nobody else could ever... Yeah, you get the point. Jesus Christ, guys. It's fully in the framing of it, like, it, like, closes on that line, and you're supposed to be like, oh, he's so scary. Like, they absolutely, yeah, whatever, we already said all of it. Okay, so we're to the farmhouse, where Lenore is tied to a chair, and she's got cuts all over her, and he seems to be dipping his knife in dead man's blood and then, like, slicing her up a bit for torture.
We're supposed to see this as evil, right?
Yeah.
Well, the things we're supposed to see as particularly evil is that he wants to kill people who are not harming human beings,
Mm-hmm.
and that he's torturing this woman.
Yeah.
But things Sam and Dean do
Yeah.
pretty much all the fucking time in later
Right,
seasons.
like,
Like, the very last episode of Supernatural features vampire torture. And, like, a couple episodes back, like, in Last Holiday, this is season 15, right? Between season 2 and 15, you literally have 13 seasons to, like, expand on this even more. And yet, they just repeat what Gordon does, but now it's fine because Sam and Dean are doing it.
yeah.
I think that's where a lot of my frustration with this episode lies. Because, like, it is so evident that it does rely just a lot of the times in the framing of the action,
Yeah.
Like, if this was the same thing, same scenario, but Sam and Dean are doing it, like, it would be framed as good.
Yeah. They'd be like, wow, they're
And
so cool. Look at the cocky one-liners they're throwing out while torturing this woman. And I think something else to bring up about this is the fact that, again, Gordon is a dark-skinned black man, and Lenore is a very pale and, I guess, like, pretty young white woman. And historically, like, the relationship between black men and white women is that a lot of white supremacists, like, often stir up a lot of racial hate by capitalizing on anxieties about black men brutalizing white women, raping white women, just like the image of a black man torturing a white woman is, like, very historically loaded, and the fact that they're doing it to show how evil he is draws on that historical baggage and that white supremacy, whether or not it was intended. Sam and Dean come in, and Gordon's acting like things are normal, I guess, at them. He says, oh, I'm just poisoning Lenore here a bit, so she'll tell us where all her little friends are. Do you want to help? Grab a knife. I was just about to start in on the fingers. And Dean says, whoa, hey, let's all just chill out, okay? And Gordon says, I'm completely chill. Sam tells him to put the knife down. Sam starts heading towards Gordon, but Dean stops him. Sam tells him again to, like, stop torturing Lenore, and he says, you're right, I'm wasting my time here. This bitch will never talk. Might as well put her out of her misery. And then he takes out a knife and says, I just sharpened it, so it's completely humane. And does he say this in sort of a mocking tone?
yes,
Yeah.
he's saying it to Sam specifically because Sam is the one with the issues.
Right.
Just issues in general. But yeah, he says this in a very mocking tone.
Mm-hmm.
And you know this, but I was, like, Googling stuff earlier about how the casting choice was made in Supernatural, alright? And, like, I found an article that said the casting choice was perfect because even when he's at his calmest, that's when he's scariest.
Jesus fuck.
Yeah.
And that person did not, like, for a single second think, like, maybe I'm being incredibly terrible right now.
I don't know. I didn't read the whole thing. Like,
Yeah.
when I saw that, I was like, okay, let's click off. Like, maybe this is not for me.
Yeah.
But like, this is the scene that they're referring to, right?
Sam tells Gordon that he's going to let Lenore go. But Gordon points a knife at Sam. Tells him that he's not gonna do anything. Dean says, hey, Gordon, let's talk about this. And Gordon says, what's there to talk about? It's like I said, Dean. No shades of gray. Dean says, I hear ya. And I know how you feel. That vampire that killed your sister deserved to die, but this one. And then Gordon laughs, and we get the reveal where he says, killed my sister? That filthy fang didn't kill my sister. It turned her. It made her one of them. So I hunted her down, and I killed her myself.
Was she the vampire from Austin?
Oh. Oh, that makes it even more interesting. Because that means that she probably was drinking cow blood and being chill.
Yeah. No, but like Sam said, right? Like he knew all along that
Right.
they are not a danger to humans. But like,
Right.
why turn someone then?
Yeah. Well, I guess doesn't Lenore mention, like, we're going extinct and we're drinking cow blood so that we survive so hunters stop going after us? So I guess it could be a recent development, or it could just be that, like, as vampires they want community, but it's sort of rude to do that by breaking into someone's house and forcing them to be a vampire, so,
Yeah,
who
like,
knows?
is the instinct of reproduction present in vampires? Like,
Maybe.
can you just not get pregnant then?
Oh, if you're a vampire? I assumed
Yeah.
that you couldn't.
Because you're essentially dead in
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
What do they do in Twilight?
I mean, I don't know. I'm assuming that they fuck and then they have a little vampire baby, but I don't actually know.
Well, we'll never know. Because
Yeah.
I'm never interfacing with Twilight.
So, Dean says, "You did what?" And Gordon says, "It wasn't my sister anymore. It wasn't human. I didn't blink, and neither would you." Which is, I think, where we really go
Yeah.
hard on the parallels, where, like, Dean is someone with a not human sibling who has been told to kill that sibling. Sam says, like you, Gray, said that, oh, so, like, Gordon, you knew all along that these vampires weren't killing anyone. You just didn't care. And Gordon says, care about what? A nest of vampires suddenly acting nice? Taking a little time out from sucking innocent people? Trust me, it doesn't change what they are, and I can prove it. And he slices Sam's arm and then forces him over to Lenore, and Dean starts pulling out his gun and pointing it at Gordon. And Gordon says, I'm not trying to kill him, I'm just making a point. So he holds Sam's arm over Lenore so that the blood drips on her face. And Lenore starts hissing really hard, her fangs come out. And Gordon says, you think she's so different? Still want to save her? Look at her. They're all the same. Evil, bloodthirsty. But Lenore eventually gains control of her face again, and she says no. No. And gosh, okay. I think it's really sad that, like, Lenore has to, be better than you need someone to be to prove that she's a person, Like,
Yeah.
I think that if you're a vampire and someone's dripping blood on your face, you absolutely have the right to go batshit about it. Yeah, Sam pushes Gordon away and says, we're done here. And he picks up Lenore and starts taking her out. Gordon tries to follow, but Dean points his gun at him and says, Gordon, I think you and I have got some things to talk about.
Dean is still pointing the gun at Gordon at this point, and we get some really nice shots of, like, close up on Gordon, close up on Dean. And then Dean does the whole, if you want to go get her, you gotta go through me first thing. Gordon puts down his knife on the table, and Dean puts down his gun. And then they start fighting. Gordon throws the first punch, it's a whole thing. And then immediately when he can find the opportunity, Gordon picks up the knife again, and Dean goes, ah. And Dean eventually gets Gordon to drop the knife by, like, smashing his hand against the wall. And they start talking while fighting. Gordon is trying to convince Dean that they're on the same side. And Dean says, I don't think so, you sadistic bastard. Gordon does more of the, you're just like me, you're a killer. thing. It's in your blood. Dean eventually knocks him out and ties him up.
So, it's the next day, and Sam comes back, and Gordon's still tied to the chair. It's been like hours, and Dean's just been watching him the whole time. And we find out that Sam helped Lenore and everyone else get out. I hope he spent all night, like, helping them pack, you know, like, putting things into boxes. Dean says, I guess our work here is done. And then he says, how you doing, Gordy? Got a tinkle yet? So, yeah, he's just being very condescending towards him. And then he says, we'll get comfy. We'll call someone in 2 or 3 days, have them come out and untie you. And can't you die of dehydration within 3 days?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that Dean's just being, like, incredibly brutal here. He sticks Gordon's knife into a table behind him, and when Sam says, ready to go, Dean? He says, not yet, and then I guess this is goodbye. Well, it's been real. And then he hits Gordon, like, really, really hard. And, like, so hard that it knocks the chair all the way over. So Gordon's flat on his back on the ground, and he will be for the next 3 days. And then he says, okay, I'm good now. We can go.
It's so unnecessarily violent. And if it's not against your brother, then it doesn't count because it's not a Cain and Abel moment, so I don't enjoy it. But, like, a part of me is, like, thinking about it in this way. It's Dean. You know how you said earlier how, like, this entire episode is like, oh, hunting is bad, but Sam and Dean are not that bad. Their specific brand of hunting is not that bad. It kind of feels like that in this moment, right? Like, he is separating himself from Gordon.
Yeah.
By punching Gordon in the face, he's kind of like saying to himself and to the audience that I'm not as bad as Gordon. I am separate from this man. Look, I just hit him, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like it absolves Sam and Dean by hitting Gordon. It absolves Sam and Dean of any possible, like, emotional repercussions or moral dilemmas to come along with it, because hey, we just destroyed the bad guy, so it's fine. And it frustrates me because it could have been, like you said, it could have been an interesting exploration of what hunting means and whether it's morally right or wrong. But we don't get that because they like scapegoat the entire situation with Gordon.
And also, in terms of the unnecessary violence, like, I'm comparing this to the interrogation scene with Meg, right? Where she's also tied up in a chair and Dane's, like, being all rude at her. But he only punches her once, and immediately Bobby's like, no, you can't. That's a real person. Gordon's a real person!
And, like, also Sam goes...
Yeah, Sam goes, like, bro, like, you're going too far. The whole framing of the Meg interrogation scene is that Dean has gone off the rails, that he is, like, way too violent. This scene, Dean is being way more violent, and it is framed as triumphant. And it's because they're framing Gordon as not a person.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
As they walk out of the farmhouse, Dean tells Sam to clock him. Dean says, hey, I won't even hit you back, so it's fine, you can hit me. And Sam says, no, you look like you just hit 12 rounds with a cement block, Dean. I love it when Sam tries to be funny.
He is funny to me.
As they walk back to the car, Dean laments that he wished he never took this job at all, because now everything's fucked. And he says, like, what if we killed things before that didn't deserve killing? The way Dad raised us, ... And Sam defends John, saying that after what happened to their mom, John did the best he could. Dean says, yeah, but the way he raised us to hate those things, like that specifically. Dean says when he killed the vampire at the mill, he enjoyed it. Sam says, "You didn't kill Lenore." And Dean says, "Every instinct of me did. I was gonna kill her. I was gonna kill them all." Sam says, "Yeah, but you didn't. And that's what matters." Again, like, they're absolving themselves, you know? They're like, we're okay. Like, we're fine. Dean says "you're the pain in the ass" line again. And Sam says, "Guess I have to stick around and continue being a pain in the ass." And Dean says, "Thanks." And Sam says, "Don't mention it." And Sam gets in the car. And we get the iconic shot of lens flare Dean looking at the camera as it zooms in on him. And I was like, why are we doing this? Like, I love a good Dean shot, you know? But why this episode specifically? Like, it's not a Dean-centric episode.
Yeah.
So why is the last shot of Dean looking off? Like, I get it, you hired the model. But, like, let's calm down. They drive away, and the episode ends. So, Crystal, what did you think of this one?
I think that the ideas that Lenore presents in this episode are pretty interesting and shape a lot of how I think about hunting in the world of supernatural. I think that the episode is also racist garbage, and Sarah Gamble should not be writing things.
For me, I think my perspective in this episode is, it is interesting. I think the best word to summarize it, aside from like, it's racist, is it's interesting. It presents a lot of interesting ideas. It's just that, why is Gordon black? It's just because prior to recording this episode, me and Crystal tried to Google whether Supernatural does blind casting for its side characters, and we didn't find a concrete answer. But like, did they just not consider the visuals, like what it would look like and what it would imply, knowing that Gordon is black and is the only black character in the episode, you know?
And also, the Super Wiki says that Gordon's character might be a reference to Charles Gunn from Angel, who is a black vampire hunter whose younger sister was turned into a vampire, which means that, like, they cast a black man on purpose, and they were still like, yeah, the script looks all, like, really great, and also, yes, I agree that we should cast all the vampires to be white, and that won't look bad at all. Like, hello?
So, best line, worst line. Fuck.
Oh, shit.
I have no idea what to say.
Okay, for best line, I think I like when Dean asks Sam, "Think about all the hunts we went on, Sammy, our whole lives. What if we killed things that didn't deserve killing?" 'Cause, you know, that line does live rent-free in my head every time I look at hunting in episodes of Supernatural.
To follow that up, I'll say my worst line is Sam's reply. "It doesn't matter anymore that you have vitriolic hatred for people who are pretty much innocent. What matters is you don't murder them."
Except when you do, with a chainsaw.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my worst line. My best line, I would say, is... My best line are the Gordon's lines regarding the hunter community and how word travels fast in the community. I just think it's a very interesting, especially because this season, right, we said earlier, they're establishing the whole hunter community thing. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting that we're learning a little bit about the culture of it, like, in passing. I think that's really fun.
Yeah.
What's your worst line?
I guess my worst line is just "dead man's blood, bitch," because, like you said, it's supposed to be the moment that we go, "Oh my god, Gordon's so evil." Dean would never say that.
IMDb rating, right? Crystal knows this already, but as I said, before we recorded the episode, I was looking up things about the show and this episode specifically. I accidentally saw the IMDb rating, so I'm opting out of this one. God, I wish I didn't tell you so I could just cheat.
Yeah.
So, Crystal, what is your IMDb rating of this episode?
Okay, that's a rough one because I feel like if people care about racism, they're gonna rate it really low, and if people don't care about racism, they will probably consider it pretty good. So I guess I'm just gonna average it at an 8.5.
8.5. Okay. It's an 8.2.
Oh, okay, good. I don't know. I feel like if it was not racist, the writing would be fairly tight, so I'm glad that people still decided that it sucks because it sucks. I wonder what they have to say about it.
This one says that it shows how deep the show goes, and that the themes of this episode are very deep, which I partly agree with, but also I think it's so in your face this episode that it's like, all right, like I get it. So
Yeah, they said that they thought it was okay, but lacking in any major plot development, character depth, or insight. Bloodlust totally changed my mind. Go watch Scarecrow again.
Have we even watched any episode of Supernatural so far that has any subtlety whatsoever?
No.
Exactly. That's it for this episode of Busty Asian Beauties. Next time we'll be talking about Season 2, Episode 4, Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. Leave us a rating or a review wherever you get your podcasts.
Follow us on social media. We are on Twitter at twitter.com/beautiespodcast and on Tumblr at bustyasianbeautiespod.tumblr.com. Our official tag is BABPOD, BABPOD. And thank you to everyone who has donated to our Ko-fi at ko-fi.com/bustyasianbeautiespod.
You can email us any feedback, comments, or inquiries at bustyasianbeautiespod@gmail.com. See you guys next time. Bye!
Bye!